Welcome back to OpenLine. We're talking about the Hall tax and tax reform in Tennessee. Some say Tennessee needs to eliminate this tax. Others say we can't afford to eliminate the tax. We have with us Lindsay Boyd, Policy Director with the Beacon Center. Let's go back to the phones. Jack. Hello, Jack.
Hello, Ms. Boyd. Thank you for being on tonight.
Go right ahead.
Okay, basically I'm against the Hall income tax applying to retirees in this state. It's a very equitable tax in that it's a percentage tax on income and such, but it doesn't apply across the board like it really should. We've been paying the tax now for a long time because me and my wife basically have a problem that we cannot go back to work all that easily. And basically, I've been trying to rebalance, and the biggest thing that gets taken out of our check at the end of the year in April is that big chunk for the Hall income tax, 6%. Now, when you add everything else to what we as retirees are trying to do, that basically takes a whole lot out of our income for the entire year. So basically what you're doing is you're chasing away a lot of individuals who've been very careful with their money through the years, who've been very responsible. But that 6% basically wipes out a lot of the stuff that we've tried to accomplish during the entire year.
Okay. So you support this? Support doing away with the tax?
I support getting rid of it, but I also support changing Tennessee's system, which I doubt is going to happen anytime soon.
Well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean?
We need a more equitable tax system for this state. In other words, a combination probably of taxation on things that we purchase, but also a fixed, say, 2%, 3% tax that would apply to anybody who's taking in a certain amount of money during the year. But it would have to be equitable according to your income.
The concern, well, thank you, Jack, for the call. The concern that's been raised by more than one caller is that we have a very high sales tax rate already.
Sure.
And so how do we, if you want to try and make up some of this money to add on to the sales tax, we're already paying almost 10%. And that is a very regressive tax. And so it just is tough for people to think about.
Well, no, we would certainly not suggest that through repealing the Hall tax, you raise the sales tax or the sales tax on food by any means. In fact, we would hope that we repeal the Hall tax and then we start to look at the other taxes that are in place and we try to lower those as much as we can as well. We think that there's definitely room in the budget and if you look at the spending on the state side, there's room to make cuts that force us to choose our priorities more wisely, that allow for cuts not only to the Hall tax but also to other taxes that we have in place.
So if you do away with the Hall tax, that's $285 million. Then you turn around and you start cutting other taxes. You're talking about strangling government. I mean, basically fundamentally changing government.
Well, one of the reasons why we start with the Hall tax at the Beacon Center is because of the unfair nature of the tax itself. It's not a user tax. These individuals are saving their money every year, year after year after year, to get to the point where they can build a nest egg that allows them to do things like retire or found a business or expand. And we're stealing that money from them even after we've told them we're an income tax-free state. We're not. And so the reason we start with the Hall tax at the Beacon Center is because we believe it's the most fundamentally unfair tax we have in the state. Now, we get that out of the way. If you want to start having conversations about other taxes like the sales tax or the corporate tax or any property taxes, things like that, you're going to be talking about, first of all, a lot more money. The Hall tax only accounts for less than 2% of the state budget. So for those like the governor who are concerned about revenue, cutting the Hall tax is the easiest tax to cut. When you try to cut the sales tax or other taxes that bring in much more revenue, you're going to be having a much higher sticker shock to the state. And so we just think that you need to keep that in mind as we're talking about ways to responsibly lower taxes for individuals. This is one way to do that responsibly and with with consideration of what our current budget and expenditures require.
So strategically, let's talk about where you are right now. So the legislature starts first of the year. Here we are right before Christmas. Kind of, you've released a set of priorities. This is one of them. We can talk about some of the others later, but this is one of them. Eliminate the hall tax. So what are you doing strategically right now? What's going on up at the legislature now?
Well, right now we are essentially shopping our priorities to the legislature. We have sponsors lined up for virtually every one of our major issues, ranging from school choice to health care reform to the hall tax to some civil and criminal justice reforms. And so we're dotting our I's, crossing our T's on those, and preparing to enter session with some ammunition. We'll be releasing some videos, telling the stories of Tennesseans across our state who are either positively or negatively affected by the issues that we're taking on, the reforms that we're presenting, who would benefit. We're going to be telling their stories as we move into January and February, and part of that will be through video. We'll be bringing them up to the legislature to testify. They'll meet with our sponsors and members of the committees that those bills travel through. So the legwork is essentially wrapping up at this point in terms of setting the groundwork for the 2016 session, and now we'll be moving towards communicating those ideas to people across the state.
So how optimistic are you that you can pass, and we'll stay on the hall tax when you talk about tax reform, that you can win here? You already have the governor saying we don't think it, he says he doesn't think it's a good idea, that we can't afford it. So when you start with that, how optimistic are you that this can really happen?
Well, we have a great deal of admiration for Governor Haslam, a great deal of respect, and we actually work with his administration on a variety of issues. But if we simply went by what the governor said, we would probably never push reforms that we've been pushing over the past couple of years. So we're not afraid to take on issues that the governor may be at odds with. And certainly you saw evidence of that this past session when we were the only organization to testify against Medicaid expansion, which was Governor Haslam's project. It was initially received with open arms by members of the media, members of the legislature, and as the public found out more about that proposal through the work that we were doing and others, it became vastly unpopular, and we were able to defeat that soundly, both in a special session and during general session. So we're not afraid to take on big issues that means that we're at odds with the administration, but we do it in a very respectful way because we know that we're opposing a policy, we're not opposing politics. And so through each of our issues that you'll see in 2016, some will be issues that the governor supports and some won't, but that doesn't deter us from believing that we can get those passed.
And you did have some, I guess, success last session because the amount of money taken in by the hall tax was lowered.
Right.
And is that, I guess, again, when I say how optimistic, what is your expectation for this session? Well,
our expectation is that we will repeal the hall tax in 2016. We don't take on an issue where we accept anything less than full victory. So we expect that we will get a repeal of the hall tax in 2016. Now, that can look a variety of different ways. That may mean that we have some sort of local hold harmless provision in there. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it means that it's a percentage cut, 1% each year until it's phased out. Maybe it's slightly higher or slightly lower. Maybe we have some revenue safeguards in there that it requires 2 years in a row of revenue growth to cut the tax. Those are the conversations that are taking place right now, but because we know that we have a host of options at our disposal for going about repealing the tax, and we know that each of those are very responsible ways of doing it, we believe that our opportunities for repeal in 2016 are very good, and we're excited about it.
And we are doing fairly well as a state right now financially. There's some money coming in. Does that help And what are you hearing from lawmakers on this? Obviously, there's some appetite for it.
Well, there's actually a great deal of an appetite for repeal in the legislature, both in the House and the Senate. There's been an appetite for this for years. In fact, they did a study back almost 10 years ago now on whether or not they should repeal the hall tax, and found back then in that summer study that yes, indeed, this tax is fundamentally unfair. It's hurting our economy. It's hurting our citizens who pay it. It's hurting people who don't even pay it because they're not getting the types of jobs that they may be able to get if they weren't. So that was, it's been a long time coming. There's been growing support in the legislature over the past several years to repeal the tax, and so the conversation's really been about when can we do it? Not should we do it, but when can we do it? And that's I think that bodes really well for what we're trying to do, because we're no longer having to convince people that this tax is wrong. Now we're trying to convince people that we can responsibly repeal this tax next year.
Mm-hmm. All right, other issues that you're bringing before the legislature. There's school choice, health care reform. Are those the major topics as I'm looking this over? I guess, why don't you go over what are the other kind of wish list items that you're bringing forward?
Sure. So I'll start with school choice. It's definitely a top priority for the Beacon Center and has been for a number of years. We were very excited that in 2015 we passed the first private school choice bill in the state's history. Only the fourth program like this in the country. It's an education savings account, or as we call them in Tennessee, an individualized education account for children with special needs. And so we're excited to see that play out. It's a program that won't be eligible for students to enroll in until 2017. So the Department of Education is working with the Board of Education and other stakeholders to put together the rules for that program and get the groundwork laid there. But it's a really exciting development for Tennesseans. It puts us for once on the cutting edge of education reform, and so we want to see that trend continue on into 2016. And so we'll be pushing namely two major bills on school choice. One will be an opportunity scholarship bill that we've been working on for a number of years that has evolved a bit over those years, but is essentially should remain the same as virtually the same as it did last year. So we'll bring that bill, and we'll also bring a bill for course access, which is a very new idea on the education frontier, and it essentially allows children to remain in their current public school system, but take classes outside of that school system if their school system doesn't have the means to provide them. So, for instance, a high schooler in a rural district in our state may not have access to all of the different language classes that they may want to take. They may have one option at their school, but maybe they intend to go into engineering, and so they want to co-major or prep in a language that meets with what their college expectations might be on that front, but it's not offered in their community or at their school. They can take that course online. They could take it at a different neighboring school. They could go to an organization, a private organization that teaches language classes. They could even use a program like Rosetta Stone. So it meets families where they're at. It also allows the public school system to continue to provide for that student, continue to be their home of their education home, but knowing that that student can be supplemented when needed through access to other educational opportunities and that are flexible, and it allows parents to customize a child's education.
So what sort of pushback are you getting on that one?
That one has actually been extremely popular with those that we've talked to about it. It's a new idea, so it's an idea that probably many in the legislature aren't that familiar with yet. So over the next month or two, we will be familiarizing them with the concept of course access. And but we look forward to doing that because it's been very well received in the states that have passed it thus far, and it's been very popular with families. And it's, we believe, a very happy medium for those who are skeptical about a fully private program, but know that there are shortcomings in the current system that we need to fill.
We're going to take a break. We'll come back. We'll talk about some more of the legislative priorities. If you want to call, there's the number 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.